Welcome to the Therapy Show. I'm Lisa Mustard, your host and guide on this journey of learning and professional growth. Here, we transform the way you earn continuing education contact hours. Whether you're on a walk, on a break in between sessions, commuting, or even preparing dinner, you can engage with cutting-edge insights from leading subject matter experts. Each episode features conversations with seasoned professionals who share effective techniques and tools tailored for busy therapists like you. Our goal is to enrich your practice and fit seamlessly into your active life, ensuring you stay informed and inspired without the hassle of traditional methods. You can say goodbye to sitting in front of a computer screen watching hours and hours of recorded trainings. Instead, we make continuing education as easy and accessible as your favorite podcast. So make sure to visit the website, lisamustard.com, to sign up for our continuing education membership. It's a fantastic way to earn your credits while enjoying the podcast. Join us on the Therapy Show, where your professional development continues wherever you are. Are you tired of sitting in front of a computer to watch hours and hours and hours of recorded trainings so you can get your continuing education requirements fulfilled? Look, I was, and I decided to do something about it. I have created convenient on-the-go learning that's completely audio-based. I call them pod courses. Well, what's a pod course? Think of it as a hybrid between a captivating podcast and a self-study course tailored for you, my perpetually busy counselor friend. In my pod courses, you can explore subjects like addiction issues, ethics and values in counseling, holistic approaches, and much more, all while you're on the move. Whether you're commuting, jogging, relaxing at home, whatever, pod courses blend your favorite podcasts with enriching self-study courses, perfect for those always on the go. How it works. So tune in anywhere, anytime. Enjoy the pod courses on any device, wherever podcasts are available. Quiz yourself, solidify your understanding with a brief quiz after each pod course. Then, last but not least, certify your smarts. Achieve a score of at least 80% to receive a certificate of completion. If you're curious to learn more about my pod course offerings, head to the link lisamustard.com/pod courses, or just click the link in the show notes. Pod courses are brought to you with pride by Mustard Consulting, LLC. Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of The Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and this week's guest is Kristen Zeismer. Welcome to the show, Kristen. It is so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Will you share with our listeners a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you help?
Sure. So I am a registered dietitian. I'm also a specialist in sports dietetics. I am a personal trainer as well. And so I founded Elite Nutrition Performance back in 2012. And my goal then was to, just basically help people to essentially train as if they were an elite athlete and eat like an elite athlete, even though they weren't. My business has gone through a lot of transition over the years. And so I've really kind of narrowed it down so that now I'm working with primarily female athletes that are active yet under fueling for their sport and just day-to-day lives. So I'm essentially teaching them to get out of that mindset of, that they can't eat certain foods because it's bad, like carbs are bad for them, and, get out of diet culture and really focus on how to fuel their body for optimal health and performance.
Nice. And you also have a podcast. So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yep. So my podcast is Female Sports Nutrition, and that podcast is all centered around everything we just talked about. But, I do talk a lot about things like skills that people need to have, such as meal prepping and planning out meals for the week. How do they actually do that? I find that is a skill a lot of people do not possess now, because I think, we're in a day and age where you could just go online and get Uber Eats and have food delivered to you, and it's not necessarily the best thing for you. But then also, talking about how to eat mindfully and actually listen to your body and give your body what it needs, and combining that with the science of sports nutrition so that what this is what the science says, but let's actually combine that with what your body is telling you at the same time.
Yeah. And I've listened to many episodes of your show, and I just think it's great. So we'll put the link in the show notes if you guys are interested in her podcast. It's really good. I think I know a lot about nutrition and working out. Like I pride myself on that, but I'm definitely learning from you. And your background has just been really helpful for me to think about my own training and what I'm eating, and also about, because we have two daughters, like
Right.
feeding them,
Mhm.
and how to teach them how to eat healthy and mindfully, and not be afraid of the the certain food groups, because there's so much
Right.
information out there about don't eat carbs or don't eat fat or eat all the fat, and
Yes.
don't eat sugar. And I mean, it's just, it's overwhelming to think about all the information out there and what's actually true and is helpful, and then what is just gonna take you 5 steps backwards to your goal. So I really love what you share. I think it's super helpful. Well, today I want to dive into helping talk therapists out there who, when they have a client that presents and they come in and they are talking about diet culture, they are worried about their weight, they are worried about their image, but yet they don't necessarily show all the signs or symptoms of an eating disorder. So how do we know if it's underfueling? I guess that's what it is. If they're not eating enough versus, a full-blown eating disorder. Like, I know we can evaluate for an eating disorder, but what if it's somebody who comes in and they have some issues just around food in general? How do we help as therapists? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So the good news is I think we've come a long way in not just it being this black and white, you have an eating disorder or you don't and you're fine,
Mhm.
because there is a lot of gray area in between there. And I think a lot of people fall in that gray area of like, I'm not doing very well, but at the same time, I'm not, clinically
Yeah.
have an eating disorder. So there's a diagnosis. Well, it's not, I guess it's not a true diagnosis, but red S, which is relative energy deficiency in sport. So
Okay.
that is basically a big umbrella term. And if you've ever heard of female
Mhm.
athlete triad falls under red S.
Okay.
So red S really encompasses a lot of things, and that's where I think a lot of females, active females, particularly that I see, but then just females in general, you don't have to be active, do fall under that umbrella. So that is going to be things like they're not able to focus very well. Their anxiety can start to increase because they're not fueling their bodies properly. They can, suffer more from depression as a result of not eating enough. Obviously, their energy levels are going to tank. They may not be getting a period. They could be, but it may be that it's just like sporadic, that they're not eating enough for their daily energy expenditure. And so, you'll start to get physical symptoms of that. A worse, not, I don't want to say worst case, but like further along would be like their hair starts to fall out or their skin's not looking so good, things along those lines. But, you can have some other symptoms prior to that where it's just like you kind of just see it in someone's face. Like they look pale and they don't look good. They don't look very energetic and lively, those types of things. So there's several websites about this, but the one website that I really do like is called Project Red S. And so the website is red-s.com. And there's a ton of information on this website. I believe this website is actually based out of the UK, but they have a list of psychological symptoms as well as physical symptoms. And so I think as a therapist, it's really important to recognize, what those symptoms are so you can see, is this something that my client is struggling with? I also am about 99% sure that they have an assessment tool on that website that you could, anybody could really use. And so some of them may not apply to therapists. They may not feel comfortable asking those questions, but I think a lot of them would apply. And, if you don't want to go through this whole assessment, you don't have to, but certainly you could just ask simple questions like, are you eating 3 meals a day? Are you eating snacks throughout the day? Are you limiting any food groups? Why are you limiting those food groups? I think the why is a huge, telltale sign as to what is going on. Like if I have a client come to me and they say, oh, I'm vegetarian or vegan, I always ask the question, well, why?
Mhm.
And that's not to like nitpick at anybody's choices, but really, I find a lot of people go that route because of an underlying eating disorder talking. But it's not necessarily that,
Yeah.
well, I just have a problem with someone killing an animal. You know what I mean?
Right.
So asking those types of questions, you could also ask questions like, have you lost or gained any weight recently without trying? You know what I mean? Like, they may say, oh, yeah, I lost like 5 pounds this past month and I wasn't trying. Or, they could also ask, are you trying to lose weight and why? Things along those lines. So I think those are just very simple questions, and they're not anything that is going to be overstepping someone's boundaries
Yeah.
or going outside of, what your scope of practice is. I think
Yeah.
those are totally valid. And once you get that information, then you can make the decision, okay, this person is probably struggling. And from there, it's certainly valid for a therapist to say, well, you need to be eating, 3 meals a day, or, that type of thing. That's just general nutrition advice. But once you get into something that's a little bit more pointed as to like, well, you need to eat this and this and this, that's when you would refer on to a dietitian.
Yeah.
And
And I think, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
okay, yeah, specifically somebody that actually specializes in working with people with
Mhm.
disordered eating, because not everybody does. And it is really a specialty area. It's not just everybody knows.
Right. Oh no, it is. It is such a specialty. I mean, for therapists too, like it is
Yeah,
something that, it takes extra training and extra hours and supervision and really kind of learning about that diagnosis or that issue. I don't think it's outside the scope of what therapists do. I mean, if we're doing our job, we're going to be asking about, are you eating healthy foods? We're going to be asking those questions anyway, because it does,
hmm,
I believe, add into, not just physical, but also emotional and mental health. If you're not
for sure.
eating well, you're not drinking your water, you're not sleeping. I mean, all of that is going to contribute to your mental health. So I can definitely get on board with asking those questions.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so so once we kind of assess for that, we need to know what we're comfortable working with and what we're not. So if it's something that I'm guessing it's on a spectrum, this diagnosis or these issues. So if it's kind of like more on the higher end of the spectrum, then you want to be referring to a specialist. But if it's something that's, you know, it's not the main focus of what's going on in their lives and they just need like general nutrition information or education, I guess that will be up to the therapist how comfortable they
Right.
are with doing those things. Okay, that
Yep.
makes perfect sense. So when you do have clients that are coming to you with red S, I love that. Like red, I had never heard that. I'd heard female triad, but I had never heard the red S
Yeah,
thing.
I think a lot of people don't know that
Yeah.
term yet, but it is becoming a little bit more, I don't know, popularized, if you want to say
Yeah.
that, which I think
Mhm.
is good because it does kind of decrease the stigma, like, oh, eating disorder. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think I
Yeah.
think it's good that people know about it.
Well, and two, it's 2025. So if you go back 15 years before all of social media, I mean, was it as prevalent back then? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the statistics on that. But with
Right.
social media these days, it's like almost impossible not to have some type
Sure.
of thought or bias about food and nutrition and what is best for me and what my goals are. I mean, it's overwhelming
Yes.
to get on social media and you see everything from, you know, I mean, it just runs the gamut and it starts young for the teenage, and I'm thinking mostly women, young women. And then it goes, I'm in like early 50s. So like menopause,
Hmm.
there's just so much
Yes.
information out there. And it's just all
Yes.
these people giving information that, I mean, are they qualified to give that information? They might say they are, but are they
Probably
really?
not.
So it's like, how do you discern who to listen to and what to follow, I guess? I mean, do you have any
Yeah,
suggestions?
so I can completely relate with what you're
Yeah.
saying. If I go on Instagram, it's like I am just inundated with,
Like,
pictures of like, look at my six-pack abs
yeah.
and check out this supplement and whatever. And it's like, this is ridiculous. Like
Right.
I kind of don't really like going on
Yeah.
Instagram. I really just don't love social media, to
Yeah.
be honest. And then now on Facebook, I'm getting ads for repair your hormones and your metabolism, 40 years old, because I'm 40, about to turn
Mhm.
41. And I'm like, well, am I there?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you.
So yeah, it's completely overwhelming. And even for somebody that like already knows, and then,
Hmm.
if you don't know, now you're like, oh my gosh. So I think the best thing that you can do is before you really start just listening to somebody, an ad pops up or whatever, somebody pops up that you've never seen before you really start listening to what they're saying and, reading what they're saying and being like, oh yeah, I should be doing that. I think it's important to go to their website, click on the About Me section, and see, do they actually have any credentials? I've done this many times, and the majority of the time they do not.
Hmm.
And, you could have gone through some life experience and now you've built a business about that life experience, and I get that. I can understand that, but at the same time, that does not mean you are able to coach other people or tell other people what to do. Like, you only know your own personal story and what worked for you. That does not mean that's what is going to apply to the
Yeah.
masses. So I think it's really important for somebody to go to this person's website, look at the About Me section. Do they have any credentials? If they don't have any credentials listed, then they probably don't have any, because I promise you, if they have credentials, they want
They're
to show
probably,
those off,
yeah.
People paid a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
So, and then not only that, like, so let's just take a dietitian, for example. Do they have the RD behind their name? But then do they have any additional specialty certifications that would qualify them to speak into whatever it is that they're
Right.
talking about,
Right. Yeah.
So not all RDs are going to be qualified to speak about every single ailment that
Sure.
could happen with nutrition.
Yeah.
So I think that's the really important part here, is to actually do your research on people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also I was just thinking about RDs and specialties. Like some RDs, they focus on like, illness and
Right.
nutrition. So like cancer oncology, or oncology RDs who
Right.
that would be their specialties, like how to help somebody who's going through chemo or how to help somebody who has diabetes. I mean, so you just want to
Yeah.
be real careful and real specific about where you're getting your information from. It's tough. I mean, we could probably go on for hours about
Right.
what
Yeah.
we're seeing, on social media. And you're right about like your own experience, because it's always nuanced. You can't just plop your framework exactly onto somebody else and think it's going to work for them just like that, because there's so much going on up here in your head
Exactly.
around your motivation and your discipline and being able to be flexible but yet understand how to reach your goals. I mean, there's so much. It
Yes.
really is very nuanced. So I'm so glad that you're doing the work that you're doing, because I know you're helping a lot of people. What about, I guess I'm thinking about young girls, teenagers that maybe are play sports and they need a little bit more support. Maybe their parents want the best for them, but they don't quite know what the best nutrition plan is for them. Could you just share maybe some basic information that would be helpful for therapists to know, like what's okay for young females who are athletes that are maybe coming to them?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I see with female athletes is, well, I say it's twofold. One is social media, right?
Mm,
So they are, unfortunately, have grown up in this time frame of like, social media is there and there is no getting away from it. So I think it's really important for coaches and parents to really speak into your child, or your athlete's life, as to like, here's what you should look for on social media and here's what you should avoid, and for also parents to check in on their parents, not, or their kids, not like they need to be a helicopter parent, but at the same time they need to know what they're looking at,
mm,
because if the athlete is always looking at pages that are just going to be promoting the keto diet, or whatever, then that's not healthy for them.
mhm,
So that's number one.
mhm,
Number two is the parent themselves, and coaches too.
mhm,
I've seen coaches where they obviously have their own struggles and their own thoughts about things. Let's face it, like any adult now grew up through the 90s, and the 90s was like, let's be stick skinny and not eat any fat, and
mhm,
now it's like very different. So, people are very much stuck in that same mindset back in the 90s. And so that can be portrayed onto the athlete unknowingly. So, if you're saying things about yourself or saying things about food that, oh, I can't eat that because that's going to make me gain weight or whatever. You really need to watch your actions and what you're saying and really kind of do a self-reflection on yourself as to like, okay, am I eating a true balanced diet? Am I being a good role model? Am
Mhm.
I saying positive things around them? Because they pick up on those
Yeah.
things. And that's exactly what happened to me when I was growing up. I mean, I had an eating disorder for like 10 years, and I'm not going to blame it all on my mom, but because there was other pieces there, but my mom was on a diet when I was growing up, and she used to pick herself apart, and that's what I thought was normal. And so I remember when I was in middle school, I was on swim team, and my best friend was as well. She was very petite and I was more muscular. And I remember feeling like I was just huge, like I was
Mm.
fat compared to her, but I wasn't, like
Yeah.
I could look back and I had like six-pack abs then, you know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
what was I talking about? And
Yeah.
so I think it's just so important that parents and coaches are really aware of what they're saying and their behaviors. And then, parents should not put on kids whatever their diet is. So, for example, if a parent is doing the keto diet or they're doing Whole 30, not to make your kids eat like that. They should not be eliminating carbohydrates. That's actually the number one thing that their
Yeah.
body needs when they're
Yeah.
younger. So,
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm just thinking about our own experiences with sports and nutrition. And I'm thinking about my kids, and about like what my husband and I, what we do. But all the things that you've shared, I think such good advice, especially about social media. Like, what are your kids looking at? And are you having conversations with them about what
right.
they're seeing? And I'm a big believer that 16, I don't think kids should have social media until 16. Like,
Correct.
I just truly believe that in my gut. And
Yeah.
parents should be having conversations with their kids about what social media is, who are they following, what they're seeing. I mean, I don't think that's helicopter parenting. I think that's just the way things are nowadays. It's like,
Right.
what are you watching on TV when I go to bed at night? When we were
Right.
younger, and then in like the
Right.
90s. And I do remember the 90s, like the snack wells. Remember snack wells?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
they're fat free. Yeah, but
Right.
they're full of sugar.
Exactly. Exactly.
I always bring that up to my mom. Like, remember when you used to get those snack wheels because you thought they were fat free? And she's like, I know. I didn't know I didn't know. She's like, that's what
Right.
everybody was saying is fat was making you fat.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Yeah, and when I
Mm-hmm.
was growing up, we had a family computer and it was in the living room. Everybody could see what you were doing. It wasn't like everybody had their own little personal phone, personal computer that they're walking around with and nobody knows what in the world you're doing. So, and there is an entire Facebook group, I'm sure there's several of them, but I'm on one of them that's dedicated to like helping parents. I think it's something like parenting in a tech world or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. So teaching parents how to actually like monitor what your child is doing without like literally standing over them watching.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's so true. Well, this has been great information. What else do you think therapists should know about nutrition and helping our clients with any type of nutrition struggles that they might be having?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is just being able to, speak to your client about just general nutrition. If you're not sure where to turn, where to even go to get some of that information, the easiest place is to go to myplate.gov, and there's lots of information that's just very basic. It's not going to be applied to any one person in particular, but that is going to give you just a lot of basic information as far as like how to balance your plate, what that should look like. And I think that that's very, very much allowed for therapists to talk to their clients about that.
Yeah.
And they can even point their clients to that website, so they can learn on their own. I feel like once you get, like I said, beyond being able to just talk to them about general nutrition and you realize, okay, there really is an issue, that's when it is time to refer them on to somebody. But I really think I think there's so much that therapists can do just on that level of like, okay, it's really important that you are eating carbohydrates because carbohydrates is going to give you energy. That's what your
Mhm.
brain runs off of. You can learn all that information from that website, just to make sure that the therapist knows what they're talking about. And then from there, like I said, they have more questions or more problems they can refer on. But because the client and the therapist should have such a good close relationship, I think it's always going to be helpful coming from somebody that they trust.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Always important. Yeah, the
Yes.
trusting where you're getting, well, as a therapist, trusting where you're getting information, and then your client trusting you as the, the one guiding them in this struggle that they might be having. So awesome. So I really appreciate you sharing all your good stuff. If therapists want to consult with you, maybe they have a client, they're kind of like, they don't necessarily qualify for eating disorder treatment, but they would like to consult with you maybe about, well, I would like to learn a little bit more so I can help my client. What is the best way for them to reach you?
Yep. So the best way that they can reach me is just go to my website, elitenutritionandperformance.com/consult.
Okay.
We can just set up a time to chat about what you're looking for. And then if we, want to work together a little bit more so I can teach you, then we can schedule something further from there. But we'll just schedule that free consultation first and, figure out where you stand, what you need help with, and then we can schedule an
Awesome.
appointment from there.
And then let's say we have therapists out there who are like, I would like to work on my own nutrition and my workouts. How would they get a hold of you for that? They just
Yeah,
work with
so
them.
so as of right now, they could do the same thing,
Mhm.
schedule that free appointment. Soon that will be changing. I will have a link directly to just scheduling an appointment that they can schedule on my website. That is not live as of yet. So for right now, they just schedule that free appointment. That's what everybody does, initially is we just schedule basically a no obligation consultation, just a free time for us to chat by phone or by Zoom and talk about what your goals are and kind of where you stand with everything. From there, I can explain how I can help you. We can set some goals for you, and then we can schedule an appointment for you.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for being here. This has just
Awesome.
been
Thank
awesome.
you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Please note that the content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional mental health care, diagnose, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your own licensed mental health provider or medical professional regarding your specific situation. While I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and my guests are also professional counselors, the discussions in this podcast are meant to offer general insights and should not be taken as personalized therapeutic advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapist-client relationship with me or any of my guests. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or have thoughts of harming yourself or others, please contact a mental health professional, call 911, or go to the nearest emergency room immediately. You can also reach out to a crisis hotline such as the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 in the United States for immediate support. Every individual's journey is unique, and what works for one person may not be suitable for another, so please use discretion and seek appropriate care as needed. Please note that the therapy show with Lisa Mustard is for informational and entertainment purposes only and not a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your therapist, doctor, or physician before implementing any suggestions from the show. The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is edited and engineered by Chelsea Weaver. If you're looking to start a podcast or ready to take the editing off of your plate, be sure to visit chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover all the pod courses and other continuing education offerings. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.